Hello, everybody, and happy Tuesday. It's the Football 360 show coming at you live on X as well as YouTube. I am JP Rock. He is Matt Bierman. I can't see Matt Bierman, but
I'm here.
I take
I'm
it
here.
that he's right there.
I'm here.
So great to be with you, everybody. Big week, fastest hour football talk on X and YouTube. You can also catch us football360show.com as well as on audio version only, Apple as well as Spotify. Matt, how you doing?
Doing well.
Great weekend of football. Football really kicking off the Lindenwood football camp. About what, between 1,800 to 2,000 kids just showing up and giving it their all, laying it all out there on the field, and just doing an amazing job. And just as testament to that is, in my opinion, it's the most offers that have probably been given out in recent memory, at least.
Remember we talked a few weeks ago that someone had given some bad advice
I was going to bring that up
and said, you don't need to go, and there's not many offers being handed out.
Yes.
Those coaches are just there for, just to be there.
Right.
Those guys are there to work. I mean, there's some really high quality coaches, but what's nice for us is we get to put our finger on the pulse. I mean, I probably talked to, I don't know, 100 different college coaches, ranging from all different levels, and
a few,
and there's I think 400 plus coaches that were on the list there to be there and evaluate from JUCOs to NAIA on up the ladder, D3, NAIA, or excuse me, D2, and then you have your your FCS guys, mid-major FBS, and then the Power 5 guys were there as well. So really interesting mix of coaches, and really cool to see all the kids that put in a lot of work, get offers and getting offers. And I think we can get into it today. What does it mean to get offered, at different ages? What does it mean when you're a sophomore? What does it mean when you're an eighth grader going to be a freshman? What does it mean if you're a senior to be? So there's a lot of delineation in those offers and what they truly mean. And I think, understanding that might help the process for some of these guys. And what does it mean if you didn't get an offer, right? And
that's something that I definitely want to address is guys who came and tested incredibly well and didn't pick up any offers. And one of the people we were talking before the show, one of the people that came was a 2026 quarterback out of Platte County, in Kansas City area, who just absolutely destroyed it, right?
Yep.
Was in like the top 2 percentile of everything, regardless of position, and didn't pick up any offers. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything, right?
And he's got a number of offers.
He does have some offers already, right? But he's looking for offers from more of the the P5 schools.
Yep.
He Iowa was there, and then he just went. He just camped with Notre Dame as well. And it's just going to be a process. And a guy that it reminds me of is last year, Lucas Allgaier went to Lindenwood, right? And you're talking about, he came in as a 6'6", 260-pound lineman. And, he broad jumped 10 feet. And he killed it, right? Everything you could want to do, had all the measurables, tested incredibly well, showed up in the padded, drills and one-on-ones. And he still walked away with no offers. Well, so now that has flipped, and he's really one of the top guys in the state, and he has multiple offers from pretty much every conference, and it's going to keep going up until signing day.
Right. And I think so guys like that, like Rocco Marriott, who we're talking about, he had a outstanding camp, and there's a tracking football is one of the metrics that they use. It's basically a algorithm that calculates your height, your weight, your position, your 40 time, your broad jump, and your pro agility.
It verifies and confirms what we see with our eyes.
Yeah. And it really just matches up to where you're at athletically. Right. So it's a really good test, and just good way to kind of aggregate the guys and kind of show coaches, hey, these guys at this level, from this status, this group of points is kind of an FCS level. These guys are D2, these guys are FBS, these guys are Power 5, these guys are NFL trending. So, and there was a number of kids, but it's interesting. Percentage-wise, if you go in and look, there's probably per session, so say 500 kids per session. There was, back the kickers out because a lot of those guys don't, do all the testing. But per group, there's probably 1 to 2 that say that they're at that range of like 4+ or 3.5+ to the NFL. That shows like they have the similar testing matrix to the guys in that level, and you see that, right? And so you see guys like that are uber athletic and have it and have the skill sets. So it's fun to see kind of how that teases out, but it drops off from there pretty quickly to like the FBS guys, and then it drops even further, and then on down the line. So people like you think that you're can hide and get away with it just by being a good athlete. Yes, there's a few guys that'll come in and test well that maybe are sneaking through, but they are really looking for guys that are high-level athletes that can play football as well. And, having numerous talks and conversation with coaches about what they're looking for and how they're changing their recruiting style is pretty cool. And I will tell you, it's eye-opening though, because I had a number of coaches at the FCS level tell me that they are like JUCOs now, right? That they are JUCOs, and that's high level football, right? FCS is a high level of football, and they're telling kids, come here for a year. If you're as good as you think you are, you'll be out of here in a year and you'll go somewhere else, right?
Right.
And
the running joke that I heard was that they were afraid to come and attend because they didn't want to leave campus for fear that some of their best players would be poached.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's the level of kind of craziness that we've reached.
Yeah.
To where you're right. And they pretty much are JUCOs. They're a system that a feeder system.
Yep.
That feeds into the bigger schools.
And so
which is another reason why people shouldn't get too caught up in recruiting and where you're going to go. Because if you are that good, you have the opportunity. It's not an end just because you sign with an FCS school or even just a D2 school, an AIA school. It's not. It doesn't mean that that's it. That's where you're at. It's really still up to you.
No, but it is interesting though, because it's very movable. It's very fluid.
Yep.
And there's a lot of like moving parts, but it is interesting. Like, when you start to talk to coaches about certain kids, and I had a couple guys about a guy that had transferred, and it's okay. Like a guy, one of the coaches like, it's too many transfers. Right. So like they're getting wary of guys that have transferred a bunch, but at the end of the day, if that guy can help them,
they'll still take them.
They'll take them. Yep. And so like, it's like this, holier than now attitude. And then when you start to talk through it, they're like, oh, wait, you're talking about this guy? Oh yeah, he's a really good athlete. Well, yeah, if that's how you put food on the table, and I'll talk a little bit more about one of the takeaways I had about, we're going to just kind of all that.
Yeah, run down a bunch of takeaways from Lindenwood
because there's just so many things, So first thing for the kids that were there, hopefully you communicated with a bunch of coaches, because if you didn't, shame on you, because they are all over the field. You certainly see some kids that are far more comfortable talking to them, in between reps and when there's transition times, and then obviously when they're on the fence line, there's a lot of coaches over on the fence line. You can talk to them, right? They're accessible. That's what they do. The cool thing is that guy that's at, let's say Quincy University, that you think you might be a little higher than, you're disappointed because you want to talk to an FCS or FBS school, that guy could be there by the end of the summer, if not next year. Right. And so how you treat coaches and how you interact and how you control and handle yourself is a transaction that can last years, right? And so I think it's amazing, because you see some of our old players are back helping. The college coaches that recruited them or were near their recruiting process still remember them. It seems like a gigantic group of people, but really when you boil it down, right, it's a small group. And so we were talking about with one of the parents about how he started like exploring like on 24/7 or one of the recruiting sites about a particular school had offered 32 quarterbacks in a particular class in 2026. Okay, now what you got to understand is like, obviously those are non-committable offers, the vast majority, unless your kid is just a dog that they're like, hey, we'll stop the presses. If you want to commit now, we'll let you, right? And there's a couple guys like that in each class, but by and large, most guys, they're still on fishing expeditions. They're trying to see what this guy will develop into. And if you show them enough, they will certainly, pull the trigger and reserve that spot for you in the sense that, you're in their board. But let's just say a school has offered 32 quarterbacks. Well, if you start to like take, zoom out, those 32 quarterbacks have been offered. If you start to cross-link them, a lot of them are the same kids being offered by the same level schools, right? And so there's really not 32. Like it'll pare down to 10. It'll pare down to 5 on their board, and then it will get to the point. So how does it pare down? It pares down by this fall when they watch your film, right? So Dylan Duff, we'll use him as a great example. He left last year with Kent State and Miami of Ohio. And then I think maybe he got someone after that. But as his film started to roll in, they're seeing that this guy's a dude. Obviously, they want to stay in contact, and they would like to have him. But at the same time, those schools validated him, and the bigger schools are now watching as well. And so then that's where he starts getting the Mizzous, K-States, people like that start to come into the picture. And so that's going to happen with the quarterbacks. There's 3 2026 local quarterbacks that got offered this weekend, and that they'll be in that group, and then it's just going to pare down. And so what those guys have to do, what's incumbent upon them, is finish strong through the summer, right? Get to a bunch of other camps so they can be seen and do all that, and then also start to get on campus from the schools that offer them, so they can build a relationship. So that kind of helps the process along. But then also really well, what's most important, have good film this fall, right? And if you put up good film, and I'm not saying good stats are good, but put up film that shows you playing at a high level and competing and doing the things that they need for their offense to, you to do in their offense, and you'll be fine. So those guys are 2026 getting offers. JP, I mean, you and I know the vast majority, it's not a non-committable event at this time, but it certainly helps the process for those guys. I mean, it puts you on the map, and it's a great way to get off the sideline and into on the playing field with offers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just like you're over there thinking, just contemplating.
Right.
No, but
you saw 2028 Bridge James pick up an offer. Another offer.
Another one. Yeah.
Another one. And now he is that guy. But still, even at that point, I doubt that either of those 2 schools that he now has offers from would legitimately take that.
Well, yeah, because they don't know if they're going to be coaching there in 4 years.
Exactly.
Right. And but you and I both know that the trajectory he's on, if he keeps picking up offers throughout the summer.
Well, you're laying down a marker. You're laying down that marker.
30 offers.
Remember me. Here's my marker that I was this guy. We were this program.
Yep.
That offered you, because you see it so many times in the recruiting sites that you mentioned it. A guy will pick up a bunch of offers, right? And so immediately those guys that pick up a bunch of offers, these say whether it's out of Lindenwood or wherever, they start picking up offers. They immediately start picking up 4 and 5 stars, depending upon what school, because that's how the offer system works, depending upon what schools offer them, right? So
you mean they're not there evaluating kids at that camp?
They're really not. And the funniest thing is somebody's out there writing like camp stories that they don't attend the camps. They see on the social media that their kid is attending camps, and even will pilfer their picture for the kid takes of them at camp and uses it and is writing about. But that's
dirty business.
That really is. But what's going on is that you have these sites will give this kid so many stars based upon offers that they have when they're young, and then you see that kid like peak by their sophomore year, and then by the time senior season rolls around, the fans who subscribe to stuff like that will be like, well, what happened to this kid? Well, guess what? He peaked. He didn't keep on that trajectory.
Yeah, and a lot of those
therefore the school who have made those offers as freshmen or 8th graders or even sophomores, they're not around come signing day their senior year.
No. And a lot of those guys peak because they get those early offers, and if they don't have good people in their corner and talking to them, they don't know what they're supposed to do, and they just kind of think they've arrived. And the truth of the matter is you have never arrived. The moment
No.
you've arrived, it's over, because there is far too many guys that are better than you, and you have to keep working through it. But yes, you do want those offers. You do want to get that, kind of get that security in the sense of, hey, this is going to become a reality, because let's be truthful. There are a lot of kids that go to Lindenwood who are better and more deserving of other kids as from performance perspective that don't get offers, right?
Right.
A kid that comes to mind, he got some offers. Chris Potter, excellent.
Yes.
We've talked about him. Excellent job at the camp. He stood out, right? A lot of coaches, you got to believe what you see, right? So a coach who was a 6-year NFL vet, brand new into college coaching, calls me and says, hey, I offered Chris Potter. He's like, 1 rep. He's like, he is a dude. He's like, he could be playing at any FBS school in the country in the slot. He's like, I've been to all these schools. I know what I'm talking about. I've played at that level. He's like, this guy, his explosiveness, how he moves, his body control, and his top end speed.
You said it was an NFL scout, though, right?
This is the former NFL.
Former NFL.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. So, and now he's just getting into college, and he's like, I don't understand, like, how they don't see this. Like, it's so obvious.
You and I have that conversation all the time.
It is so obvious. And so, yes, you and I can maybe be accused of being homers of like, oh, this is no, but it's not, because I'm not going to just randomly say a kid can play because I like him. If he can play, he can play, right? There's certain guys you'll have conversations about, and coaches, and they hear this from so many different people, right? But we're on the field, we're talking to them, we're helping run all the drills, all the testing, and then helping kind of just keep the flow good in between those sessions. And there's so many different coaches that see it so many different ways, which is like anything else in life. But there are certain coaches that will place high value as soon as we're like, hey, look at this kid. They're watching them, right? And so then it's up to that kid to perform to the level of which they need to see to offer them. And not every school has the same process. Some schools, everything goes through the OC or the DC or the head coach, whatever it might be.
Consensus.
Yeah, there's a lot of consensus. Yeah. So, but those staffs that you see, like Miami of Ohio and Kent State, were both there in full staffs. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 guys missing, but they're working and working all day. And then you see like maybe the FBS schools, which made this year tougher, is there's all these schools were doing official visits this weekend.
Right.
And then they're trying to close deals on guys that are,
and they want to have their entire staff there to help close the deal on it, to let them know how much they're loved by the entire staff.
And I think there's a really silly rule by the NCAA when they moved that up. I don't know that it was very well thought out, because it makes these coaches be in 2 places at one time.
Right.
And, but there's plenty of head coaches, FBS head coaches that were there. And I think those guys probably came away, in a better position than most, because they got to see it live. And, some of these guys struggle, I think, in the evaluation thing, because I had a coach tell me, he's like, look, the more information we can get on these guys, the better. And it would help us sleep at night, because, a lot of times, like, we know we're making a decision on someone, but we really are not sure if that guy's the guy. And so, you hate to, have a career where you're putting all your eggs in a basket of a high school kid that may or may not even love football. Right. And I think, to go back to your point on the guys that burn out or the guys that flame out, a lot of them just don't love football. Like, and that's one of the most dangerous things. And we've talked about it before. Do you love football? Or do you love the thought of being recruited and all the adulation that goes along with it? That's dangerous, because those guys get to school and they realize how much work it is, and they don't want to do it. And let me tell you, if you think it's more work being at a D1 over an NAIA, you're wrong. There's just as much stuff going on and just as much work being done at the D2 level. Maybe not to the organization level and the support staff level, but, running 110s is running 110s, right? And lifting weights and cleaning and all those things, it's all part of the process. And those weights weigh the same at those universities. The weight room might look different, but the weights still weigh the same. right? And you got to put in the work. And so you better love the game, no matter what level of the game you're at. You better love the game. Like if you don't love football, you're kind of just screwing yourself over in the long term, because you're going to get into a situation in college when you might have just been able to go get a job, start a business, get into a trade. You might just be lying to yourself and delaying the inevitable. So, right, if you don't love football, college football is not for you. It's just not. Like, unless you're so incredibly gifted that you can work your way through it, it's probably not worth wasting your time or the coach's time.
You better love the entirety of it, the whole process, not just the game. Everybody wants to get out there and play, but like you said, you better love the waking up early and the putting the work in the weight room and going through everything that you need to be. And you said something earlier about, you think you've arrived. Well, when you've arrived is when you've taken your career as far as it could be, whether it's as a starter, backup, or whatever level you are on the depth chart in your college, or the ultimate goal should be, if you're going to play college football, is to make it to the pros, right? And so that's when you've arrived. Picking up offers, that's nothing, right? Signing, that's nothing. That's just the beginning. And so there's a long process. And so that's what you really need to fall in love with.
Right.
And have that explained to you.
100%. But then, the tough thing becomes, and you and I know this, we've talked about it 1,000 times, it's professional football now at the FBS level.
Yes.
Right. Power 5 in particular. The money that's being paid to these guys is through the roof, right? And so it's a money, double-edged sword, because cars. Now you think you've really arrived because someone is paying you 60, 50, right. 200,000 to $1 million to play football in college. It's outrageous, right? But good for you if you can get the money. And so now the universities are going to start paying here before long, and the collectives are still, I would assume, still going to keep paying money. I can't imagine they wouldn't, to give competitive advantage to their beloved school. But I think if you think you've arrived, the number of guys that are going to fall short of the NFL, they fall short every year of the NFL, right? But if you can get that money ahead of time and you don't really love it, it's going to exacerbate every problem you think and every problem you have with the game of football. And you're going to learn to resent it. But hey, on the flip side, at least you're getting some money, and you're able to, if you're smart, come out of college with some money in your bank and invested. So, but I don't know, JP. I just, there's so many different avenues when you come out of that camp, right? Where you have so many conversations. I mean, the conversations about how college coaches are evaluating guys, what people look at the 40. There's kids, I promise you, that got offered where they didn't even look at their test scores. Right. I know for a fact there was numerous schools that said they did not. Like, they don't even care.
Yeah, because you can look at those. If you look at everybody's overall times, you see guys who they had really great times. They had better times than guys who came away with offers.
Yes.
And some of these guys who had some of the better times or best times, they'll be lucky if they play NAIA football.
Oh, 100%.
So that's not the be all and end all. Is the point here?
It's a part of the process,
part of the puzzle.
And so, something that we were talking about how they do those ratings. One thing that, to be very clear, what's tough with doing the tracking football rating, because they have a whole deal with track times and how it converts to football.
Mm-hmm.
But that's straight line sprinting, right? So then they have they have adjustments for other tests. So of those 3 tests, the broad jump, the pro agility, and the 40, 2 of which are skill-based tests, right? The 40 is very start dependent. So that is a skill set. Starting properly is a skill set, right? The pro agility is a skill set, because you have to have certain steps. You know how to do them, and you do them in sequence. It speeds you up, right? Now, you have to be athletic to be able to execute said sets and skill sets, right? But on the opposite side, the broad jump is probably the most pure of all of those, or a vertical leap, because there's not a ton of technique to it. Yes, you have to be able to load and explode, but the technique is not over the top. It is pretty self-explanatory.
Not like a 40, no.
Stand here and jump as far as you can.
Right.
Okay, you can't stick your landing. Well, the reason you can't stick your landing is because you're probably at the tail end of your of your max length. And there was a
Mhm.
couple kids, by the way, that jumped like 10'7".
Yes.
I think was the furthest one. I don't
It
even know
was-
who did it, but I know that the coaches had to grab more. Vast majority of kids are jumping under what 10 foot.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Right.
the vast majority. And if you're jumping anywhere from 9 to 10 foot in high school, that's pretty darn good, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That's really good. We did have the opportunity to force plate test quite a number of guys. I think we got a little over 1,000 of them tested, if
Right.
not a few more. So that'd be interesting to correlate a lot of those tests. But we've talked about Preston Brown having a really high force plate score in his power ranking, and he tested extremely well in his overall day.
Preston
Right.
Brown, who we've been talking about for a long time, who picked up his first 2 D1 offers
Yeah.
from the camp from SEMO and Southern Illinois.
Yep. And those guys would love to have that guy on their team, right? I mean, just absolutely love. And I know Wyoming was really all over him as
Right.
well. So, and you have people looking at him because he's so athletic, kind of like you said with Rocco. Like
Those are actually the 2 most athletic
Yeah.
quarterbacks who were at the camp, 1 and 2.
which is interesting because usually you don't see the quarterbacks at the top of the heap, right? There's
No.
always like a running back or a receiver, but that's how it works. So, Preston's a guy that I think is going to, continue to rise, get better. He's going to, you're going to see colleges, I think, try to approach him to play other positions, right? He's going to have that decision to make. You see a kid like Rocco Marriott, you have with his height and speed, you have guys looking and going, oh, well, I could do a lot with you, right?
You're 6'8", you're 6'3", you're 208.
Yeah. I mean, and he ran, and I mean, his pro agility was really
4.09
good.
pro agility,
Yeah.
9.9 broad jump.
Yep.
I
watched him do the pro agility. It was clean, really clean.
Yes.
I think it was his first attempt too.
But he's been killing it. He killed it at Elite 11, and he's been killing it at every camp and combine that he came to. He was at KC varsity, and KC killed it there. I mean, so he's consistent,
and he threw well.
He throws
very well,
exceptionally well. So he's consistent with his numbers. So you have Lindenwood camp, and you have KC varsity, and you have Elite 11 that you can look at numbers from him and be like, wow, boom, boom, boom. Right. It's all in line. It's not an aberration that, he was at one camp and he ran a 4.5 and then he's running, 5.1s.
Correct.
And 2 other ones.
So that brings to a good point is like, so you're, let's say you're him, right? And you can't assume that these coaches all know that. You and I know it because we follow it, right? But you to assume that they're following is probably is giving too much credit to the process.
Correct.
They're not. I mean, they could be, but the vast majority are not, right? And the guys that have offered you are probably hoping the other coaches don't figure it out, right? Because he's a higher level performer. Same thing with Preston, very elite level athletes that should have more going for him. But there's something, for whatever reason, they have not gotten the love that they need and they deserve. But that will come, I think, in due time. I think both of those guys in particular, because of their uber athleticism, somebody will pull the trigger on it, and then it'll kind of open the floodgates. And Rocco's definitely got a little bit more time. But I think there's a lot to all this process and how you communicate with the coaches and reminding them what your results are, reminding them, tagging them, sending them film from there, because to assume that they saw every rep is probably not going to happen, right? There's 4 groups throwing. They could be looking the other way when you throw, right? So that's another good reason why you see a lot of kids are taping their reps, right? Hey, a good strategy too is I've seen a lot of film, and I know, JP, you've watched a ton of kids posting their results and then posting their reps.
Hard time keeping up with all that. Yeah.
If you could circle yourself, right? Because there's usually 2 lines going. Circle yourself.
Yes.
Or do
Very
something
important.
that would show where you're at, much like a huddle film.
Yeah.
Which you can do in any basic editing software on your phone, right? So I would suggest doing that. Single clips are good. If you got 5 or 6, you could run them together almost like a little highlight film. I think that's not a bad idea. And then novel concept here. Send a thank you letter to anybody you spoke with. Communicate with them. Don't let this be the last time. If you got an offer, certainly send them a thank you letter or a message. If you communicated with them, hey, or you didn't talk to them and you wanted to talk to them, send a note, and show them what you did so they can look at it. And if there's interest, 9 times out of 10, you're going to hear back from them. But far too many people get there and they hope and wait, and you gotta press the issue, right? You have to press the issue. If you don't, you're gonna be left standing, kind of, watching everybody else get what you want.
Yep, you have to be proactive, and like you said earlier, you'd be surprised the number of kids I had to say, "Did you talk to any coaches?" And they'd say no. I'd like, "Well, how many did you go up and introduce yourself to?" None. And having to tell various kids, hey, look, there's a coach from the coaches from Wyoming. There's a coaches from Kansas. There's a coach, Mizzou coach. There's this
Nebraska,
Oregon, wherever. Go introduce yourself. Lindenwood, right? And they would do that. And those coaches would talk to the kid, take their name down, want them to follow them. They were, shake their hand, look them in the eye, tell them a little bit about themselves, tell them how they did. Sometimes the coaches saw them out there, sometimes they didn't, but they'd still take their information down. They'd follow them on social media. And that's building a relationship. That's your first step in building a relationship that lets you in that door. And then I'd hear from kids be like, oh yeah, the coaches followed me. He's talked to me. They want me to do this. They want me to do that. They've had me on their board, whatever it is. But I mean, that's something that I know we've talked about it in the past in previous shows, but that's just something. And if you're a parent, you need to instill that on your kid. That, and when somebody asks your name of a coach or myself or Coach B or Matt asked you don't say Bobby, because ultimately it's Bobby what? You always, somebody asks you your name, you say your first and your last name.
Tell them where you're from.
Tell them where you're from. Tell them what position you play. Tell them what grade just sell yourself, because we said last week, this was a job interview, right? And you could tell the kids that came and it was a job interview. And a lot of those kids walked away with offers. You have your Mason Wentz, you have, Mike Cunningham, Carter Burdell. I mean, the list is I can't even, it'd take me a minute to count up the number of offers of guys who just
crazy.
Went out, whether it was, FCS or D1 offers or all the way down the line. Just the number of offers is crazy.
Well,
that went out.
It's what's sad is there's a lot of good players that probably feel as though like, hey, I went and it didn't work my way.
My best. Yeah.
But if that is you, what you need to do is look at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, how hard did I prepare for this? Okay. Was I preparing 3 months ago? Was I preparing 6 months ago? Was I preparing, the week of? What was I doing to work on my testing strategies? What was I doing to work on my one-on-one strategies, my individual skill strategies? What was I doing to help show up? And if your answer is, well, we had spring ball, that's not good enough.
Or you played another sport.
Or I played, soccer, lacrosse, baseball. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for an intriguing story or an intriguing performance. That's what they want to see, right? They don't care if they really don't care.
They don't care if you ran 6 miles a day because you were playing lacrosse or any of that.
They don't. Yeah, right. Oh, you guys won the sectionals in baseball.
Yeah,
good for you. Yeah. There's no context for them. They don't care. What's interesting though is I was talking about there was a boy there who was he's a AAA hockey player who all-state lacrosse, and made a comment to one of the coaches, FBS guy, and said, hey, this kid, he ran pretty fast 40, he had a couple good catches. And lo and behold, because we kind of talked about it last week, very intrigued. Why would he be intrigued? Because that person has competed on a super high level in a sport that's not traditional. Baseball, not a ton of crossover, right? Hockey's intriguing because there's not a lot of crossover with hockey, only because the high-level hockey players can't play football, and the high-level football players don't play hockey because of all the crossover in times of year. So when you hear of a guy that's like a AAA level hockey player, if you kind of know what that means, that's a highly dedicated athlete, right? So then there's some intrigue to that, like, oh, the 6'8" basketball player that's never played football. There's intrigue with that guy. The run-of-the-mill sized athlete that plays baseball, lacrosse, soccer, or basketball, they're not that intrigued. They're just not, unless you are an animal at that sport and they've happened to get to see you play it. So, but, and that brings me to another point. So the number of coaches that you can tell are just looking for ready-made products. There was guys there that were scouting high school kids, and they want guys to be game ready. They want them to be the right size. They want them to have the right physique. They want them to have the right skill sets, because they are not there to develop you. They're there to coach you in a position group. And if you fit the norm, you fit the height, the weight, the speed, they're not there to develop you. And you hear that more and more throughout the process. Like, that's not their goal. My take on that is if you're not there to coach and develop a guy, then your role should be manager, not coach, right? That You're a position manager. You're not a coach, right? Because a coach is going to develop somebody, but some of that is just kind of where they're at in the cycle, right? Depending on what school they're at, if they're getting guys in and out,
you got the transfer portal.
Yeah, I mean,
you're not going to prepare this guy for the next guy.
Oh, you've talked about that 1,000 times. Why would you want to spend your time and money on that and energy, and then just to lose the guy to a school that can pay him more money than what you have?
Right.
And so, so you get that side of it, right? So now more than ever, being prepared and being game ready, size wise, being game ready, skill wise, is all the more important, right? So, and the tough thing is and you're going to see with some of these kids, like a kid that's like a Preston Brown, a Robbie Preckle, those guys that are definitely FBS level skill, and then they have FCS offers. Those schools, there's some that are probably wary of them because it's like, we're not going to be able to hold on to this kid. Like, if he does what he's supposed to do and he is who I think he is, we're not going to keep him long.
Right.
And so then there's that kind of like, why do I want to bring this guy in if he's too good for us?
Another guy who falls into that is Elliot Hummer. From Fort Simmel was absolutely murdered it.
Yes.
I mean, consistent 10-2, I think.
225 he weighed in.
225.
After running track.
A little over. I mean, just such an unbelievable natural athlete. Just another one of the top athletes in the top percentile.
And I was asking him his grades.
Yeah.
4.3 or something.
Yeah.
and his ACT was 32 plus. I mean, it's something like crazy number, right? Yeah, whatever, high 30s.
Right.
All I got to say is 30. Yeah, 30 plus.
It's crazy. Which is another point, is that I heard more than any other camp, believe it or not, coaches asking kids about their grades.
Mm-hmm.
And if that kid did not have the grades, no matter how much they impress them, they'd be like, "Will you come back to us once you raise that?"
Yep.
Once you get that going, once you get that down. And it was dejecting to some kids, but that's something that you have to pay attention to if you're a player, or especially if you're a parent, because you know what? There were kids there who were 6'5", 296-pound linemen whose schools were interested in, and straight up told kids, I would offer you, but your grades, you got a 1.8 GPA or whatever.
I mean, at the end of the day, like I was talking to a coach about quarterbacks. He's like, hey, if he doesn't have a 3.5 or above, you're not leading my team.
Right.
You can't lead your own life. You ain't leading my team. Right.
Right.
So same goes for a lot of the other position groups. Like, it doesn't have to be Harvard and Yale. They want to know you're competing, right?
No, these were NAIA schools that wanted the grades.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
You got to have the grades.
Yeah, because they can help pay you for your school if you have good grades, right? They can get some academic money and blend your scholarship with athletics and academics.
Exactly.
And so, the tough thing is that so many kids go into this thing and you can take it as, oh, that really stunk. It didn't do anything for me. Or you can be really just honest with yourself and say, what did I do to prepare? What could I have done differently? Did I spend time talking to coaches? Was I fully prepared? Or, which can happen, was I in my own way? did I get in my own way? Did I spend time, thinking too much rather than just playing, right? And was I stressing out a lot? And that goes to why you want to do this camp when you're a younger athlete.
It's
There's a
also good.
lot of 8th graders there.
Yes, absolutely. And they have a leg up. It's also what was good about people who were coming 2 days in a row.
Yes.
If you had never done
yeah.
any camps, right? If you had not been coming to the elite combine, if you'd not gone to KC varsity, right? Then you want to do 2 of them. So boom, I know what this is. I have a little bit of stage fright, a little bit of nerves. Coming back the second day, you know what it is. But that's why you want to come to elite combine. That's why you want to go to KC varsity. Guess what? The same people who are running the testing and stuff with Lindenwood camp, elite and the KC varsity guys.
We're there. Like we're intimately involved. And so, you see people kind of sneak onto the field and want to be a part of it. But the reality of it is like, it is what it is. That right has been earned to be out there, to have that relationship with Lindenwood and the camp. And we take it very seriously, right? We enjoy the process. We want to do the best we can. And the thing is we get feedback all the time. Like, hey, it's very well run. College coaches like, hey, it's very easy for us to evaluate kids. I mean, it is, once you get these guys moving through, it may seem like a lot of people, but you have to be very efficient to get that many kids tested, height and weight, all that stuff, a picture taken, the whole process has to be from top to bottom. And Coach Brian Baldwin over at Lindenwood does an unbelievable job on the Lindenwood side of organizing the registration.
Yes.
Dealing with all the phone calls. I mean, you can only imagine.
Runs exceptionally smooth. 2,000 kids in 2 days. It's
wild. It is wild. And so
you don't crack a smile for 2 days, but
no, you can't. You can't rest, right?
No.
And but phenomenal job. And the hats off to Coach Stuger and the whole staff there, because those guys are working the entire time. And it's such a fun event, but it's also stressful. We love being a part of it, but it's also stressful. A suggestion I'd make to a lot of the younger athletes, that, if your parents are listening and you're like, oh, what's this Lindenwood thing? My kid's only in 5th or 6th grade. Next year when we're talking about this, put it in your mental bank. Bring your child. If he has any aspirations of being a college football player, sit in the stands and watch. Because I know a lot of my young quarterbacks came. My son came. He sat and watched. This is like his 3rd year, probably coming and watching. Next year he's going to be there, and he's excited about it, right? Because it's something that he wants to do. It's probably going to be nerve-wracking for him, but it should be.
But he's going to be so well prepared because this past year was his first elite, right? And I'm sure next year he's going to do elite again. Probably going to do KC varsity again. Lindenwood's going to be, he knows what he's in for.
And you know what? He jumped in and did combine training this year. And he's not doing he wasn't doing the Lindenwood camp, but he wanted to do it. And I think it's interesting because it's like any sort of competition, right? It's like, well, I want to compete. I want to get as fast as I can get in the pro agility, right? And you knock 2 or 3 tenths off of your pro agility. That's an accomplishment. You feel really good, and it's a rewarding experience. So then you run your 40, you knock a couple tenths off of that. And it's like, wow, so statistically speaking, say you're like an 8. Okay. So the laser 40, I
was actually shocked how fast he was at the St. Louis Metro Football Coaches Association.
Yeah. Pretty fast.
He was pretty fast. He was
little legs.
Yeah. For the pro agility and the 40 laser 40. I was shocked.
Well, so like each year you figure, let's just say a kid's running like a 5 flat or a 5.5. Okay. Well, in 7th grade. Well, then in 8th grade, he should be, that 0.2 of a second faster, right? Because you're getting bigger and stronger. So now you're like 5.3 range. Then that guy bumps down. He should be the 5.1 when he's going in, like he's that, going in freshman year. Then when he starts to get muscle mass and get true size, that's where you'll see it. It'll be like that 4.8, 4.7, right in that 4.6 potentially if he gets super strong and efficient. And it's a process. I have seen, and I know you've seen this over the years, there's these kids that they have their online profiles and they're putting on there like they run 4.8 40s and 4.7 40s in the 6th grade.
Mm-hmm.
One, that's just really hard to do unless you're like an elite level sprinter, but it's hard to do because you don't have enough muscle mass to like sustain your speed. Once you get into like your overdrive, like max velocity, like top end of your speed, it's really hard to do. Right. And so, a lot of kids, like fabricate that stuff, but they're putting themselves out there. And that's another thing to talk about. The number of people that tell kids not to run their 40s, it's ill-advised. Like they don't know what they're doing. They might be a strength and conditioning coach. They might be a speed coach. They might like to time you under their own constraints and their own times. But all I know is those college coaches are there. They're looking at the app. It's a red flag. And so you're taking advice from people that are not inside the velvet rope. They're sitting in the stands like everybody else, and they're not in there. And there's a reason why, because the college coaches want to either have their guys timing it or someone they trust. Those coaches at that combine, at the mega camp, we know so many of those guys because we've been doing it for a long time. It's the same guys coming back over and over and over. And we had 2 coaches approach us about doing the same thing for them at their site, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of which I'm not going to bring up. If we did it, it would be really cool, like really cool. It's not going to be in our region. It'll be outside of our region. And so, but he said it's sorely needed, and they'd like us to run the same type of event for them. So, it's hard to understand like why you would tell someone not to run, right? Either they're not prepared, and if you're going to you for speed work, why aren't they prepared, right? If they are prepared, but you want it to be under your controlled device, your parameters, then you wonder what's going on testing wise. And if you just don't want them to compete because you just don't think it's a good place for them to compete, I would argue that the vast majority of those kids are testing, and you said it's a red flag when they don't.
Especially if you're a complete unknown. Now, if you're a guy who shows up, there's a guy who showed up, his parents signed him up for the camp before he committed. He's committed. So guess what? Mom and dad are like, we paid for this. We want you to go. And he's a competitive guy who wanted to compete. He didn't run his 40, but he really didn't need to run his 40.
Oh,
right. Because he's committed to a school, and that school was there. And they you want to talk about velvet ropes. They pretty much put him in a velvet rope, right? The coaches from that staff were like watching his every move to make sure that they could,
keep him away from other people.
Let everybody know that, hey, he's ours.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a red flag. And you have guys who come in and, they're an unknown. I might know about him. You might know about him. Like, hey, I'm not going to run my 40. Well,
why?
It
happens all the time.
Yeah. Why? What are you here for?
Well, okay. So yeah. And if you run a 5 flat 40, well, on the lasers, knock 0.2 off, and that's your hand time.
Right.
And you will be shocked the number of times you'll tell a kid like, hey, that was a 4.79 hand equivalent.
Yes.
Oh, that's what I've been running.
Absolutely.
I mean, it
every
is
single time.
Like, why are people not telling these kids that's how it works? I don't understand. We tell them at every one of our comments, we tell them like, this is what it is. Like, this is why it is what it is. Right. I mean, it's a standardized test. Yes. You need to know how to start, and there are kids that run really good 40s that have horrible starts, and it does not look that great. But as long as you're in a certain range, you're fine. You're fine. Like the kids that are sub 5 at that event are guys that are going to be college football players. Now, if you're a big boy and you're mid 5s, man, awesome. But if you're a skill guy and there's plenty of kids that run sub 5, but it's at the percentage of people that are going to play at that level of football, right? Yes. It's not just dudes showing up to run. And to your point, there will be 1 or 2 guys that run uber fast that quite honestly,
they're not college.
They're probably not college football players,
right?
They're track runners, or they're just good athletes.
Really good athletes.
Might be.
Yeah.
But that's another point. I saw a number of kids, and maybe I'm just maybe I'm biased because of it. The number of kids I saw locally post this year that they weren't going to Lindenwood and they had some other camps that they were at out of town, to me is bad, because you have the opportunity to be in your own backyard, sleep in your own bed, and go to one of the nation's premier mega camps, right?
Yep.
There's 120 to 40 kids on the field at any given time in your position group. They don't overdo the one-on-ones, but you should get reps if you're standing in line and paying attention. But the number of kids that decided to go to a single camp for a single team is a little alarming to me. When that they probably had scouts at that, coaches at that event, So
Yeah, and that's what I tell everybody, and it's the same thing, and we've said it for months now. But I mean, the most bang for your buck, right? You want to go to Lindenwood Mega Camp because you're going to have a lot of teams. I mean, think of the guys, and I'm sure you talked to guys afterwards, and they told you I talked to 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 coaches. Okay, so Gabriel Cunningham, right? Tight end,
yep,
Wentzville Holt, 6'5", 240 pounds, picked up 8 offers by himself. 8 offers
yeah,
in one day. And then the next day he got his 9th offer in 2 days from Missouri State, right? Before that, he had 1 offer from Eastern Michigan.
yeah.
But playing at Wentzville Holt, not necessarily on the huge map. Here he came to that, I talked to him and his mom. I'm like, man, you really should go. You really need to go. Came to the elite combine,
Yep.
came to KC varsity, came to Lindenwood Mega Camp, was prepared, killed it.
Yep.
9 offers, 2 days.
Yeah, he's the guy who trained a bunch last season. We saw him a bunch,
Yep.
and he is obviously grown, and he fits the the mold of what they're looking for. He's long, he catches the ball. He put his highlights out there, had a good day, really really high quality, right?
Yep, good speed.
And so it's easy to see why he's going to get offers, right? But at the same time, like there's a lot of kids that maybe are at his level or a little bit below that made a bad decision. I'm going to go to this one, right? And it's like this I know better, right? And I'm going to go the opposite of the way everybody else is going. Yes, sometimes in life that is a great strategy. When there's 400 college coaches there and you have an opportunity to perform in front of them, bad opportunity if you chose not to go there and you went to a single school camp. Bad idea.
You risk the opportunity of maybe getting 1 offer versus getting 9.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, math is hard, but it's not that hard. You understand what your best odds are and what the best option was, and clearly that was the best option. And there were multiple guys who picked up multiple offers.
Correct.
From the camp, but no, he just really stood out. You're 6'5", you're 240, you run like routes like a receiver, you have the good hands, and good things are going to happen for you. And now there were guys who like we said before, who did all the right things, but it just wasn't their time yet. Because I saw some guys who were disappointed because they came there with expectations of picking up an offer and it didn't happen. That doesn't mean that it's not going to happen yet. And you're right, they might not have prepared well enough for the testing part, but that's not the be all and end all.
No.
And more things go into it. It's a totality of your game and your athleticism and your academics and everything that ultimately will lead you to picking up offers.
And it's also using your resources, right?
That's true. Very true.
The number of kids I had come over and say, hey, do you know who that is? Or, have you seen so-and-so? Yep. That tells me that kid's there and he's aware of what he's trying to accomplish. And, like the number of times, like between now and the end of the summer, I will make a phone call, yourself, or send a message to a school where we know somebody and say, hey, this kid's coming to camp, get an eye on him, right? And then you explain who that is and right? So I did that this morning, right? That's actually kind of an interesting thing. I think people will be intrigued to know the deeper we get into this, these college teams are starting to structure themselves. Two kind of cool rules coming out. Well, not one cool rule, some really bad ones from the NCAA as well, but they're going to start to remove some of the on-field coaching, constraints. So you're going to be able to have more coaches on staff, right? Volunteers and paid. So the NCAA is allowing more staff members onto the field, right? And so before they would say they've had analysts that would be up in the box, there'd be guys on the field. So there's not, I wouldn't say it's unlimited, but that's starting to trend that way. So that's a good thing. So there'll be more guys getting into coaching. So some of the FCS guys I talked to were really pumped about that. So that's really cool. But also these programs, and we've kind of touched on this, are starting to set themselves up like professional sports organizations. So they have GMs, right? So an actual GM, like Les Snead is the GM for the LA Rams.
All right.
Right. He was with the St. Louis Rams as well. So he is the GM. Then they have player personnel directors, that manage, the player personnel. And then they have College scouts, they have pro scouts. Well, in college now, they have high school scouts and they have college scouts, right? Because they're internally scouting. And I think a lot of people will be interested to know, what is a pro scout? Well, a pro scout is on a staff and he's scouting other NFL teams for talent that they could grab, right? Whether it's off the practice squad or they grab them off, a roster when they hit free agency, things like that. In college, as we've established, they're going to be looking at other schools, D2s, NAIs, other schools, right? And so that's a pretty cool opportunity for those guys to, have organizations much like an NFL team. So these GMs are really setting the stage for managing what the team looks like. And then the coaches can just coach, which I think a lot of those guys want to do, right? Recruiting's still there, but these guys are doing so much of the legwork. So figuring out who those people are and what the hierarchy and what their recruiting department looks like can benefit you a ton, because yes, some of the smaller schools are not going to have that. But if you're shooting Power 5, you want to know who these guys are. You want to know what their structure looks like, right? A good way to do that is go on their staff page, look at how they have it set up. The guy that was at Washington, I forgot his name, he's the player personnel guy. He's our GM. He's now at Alabama. He went with his coach, right? And so he was at Michigan, then he went to then he went to Washington, and now he's at Alabama. Those guys are going to be, a little bit more accessible than like an NFL GM would be, because NFL GMs are really, they're not like they kind of run their organization and they're in the media a little bit, but it's so insulated. College is going to be much more fluid, in my opinion. So, I think there's a lot to how it's all structured. It's going to be really interesting to see how it shakes out here the next 5, 6, 8 months, and then the next 3 to 5 years,
right,
with who's doing what. And the FCS guys, they're going to be in the group of 5 schools are going to be in a similar situation to each other, because if they can't pay and opt into the paying, where they're going to be sharing their budget with the athletes, it's going to be really difficult to get some of those guys, and it's going to be the incentive for people to go there and then get out, right?
Yep.
Which is really hard, because at the end of the day, you're there to get your education and play football.
It really is.
But I have a sneaking suspicion that the model is going to be at the higher levels, you're there to play football, and school's part of it.
I'm sure.
Right?
So a question from a listener, it says, can you touch base on the June 15th for colleges being able to reach out and talk to kids going into their junior year?
So it's essentially just a rule for how they can communicate. So that will start to show you, okay, so people are wondering, well, how they communicate with me to begin with when I just got an offer and I'm a sophomore at a camp. Little different, right? Like the communication times have bumped up. Like it used to be, what was it, September, right? August, whatever the heck it was. So it's now bumped up. So now they can talk to those guys in a younger time frame. And so once you're a junior, academically, you're heading out of your sophomore into your junior year. That's where you're at right now. You graduated that class of sophomore. So now you're in a space that you're now a recruitable athlete where they can start to communicate with you. And then they have rules around, if you call them, they can't call you back, but there's only so many times they can talk to you. There's a lot of rules, but being on campus, you can go see them a bunch. In this past cycle, when they were out on the road, they could only see you one time, right? So that was a new rule. Right before, they can go pepper your school multiple times. This time they can only see you one time. So now, come June 15th, they can call you, right, or reach out, and then you'll start to get. And then I forgot what the date is, but then all those official offers will start to actually go out. So all these kids that have been getting offers for like the last, 2 years of their recruiting cycle, you'll see which offers are real recruitable and are, committable, because you'll start to get true offer, like you'll get like a letter, like an actual university letterhead and an official offer. And so a lot of those are just, those unofficial offers are just placeholders, as you said, JP, like it's a placeholder. So a lot of these schools, so say you got an offer right now and you're a junior, then you don't hear from those people on June 15th. Someone might have done some more homework and found something they liked better, or you just might not fit what they need, or somebody offered without really getting the proper approvals.
Right.
Right.
Gotcha.
When you say it's fair.
Yep, that's fair. So hour is up, man. It's fastest hour of football talk on the planet for a reason. We just shot through it with hopefully a lot of good information for people. A big takeaway or two from the Lindenwood camp that we didn't touch on for you.
Come prepared next year. Don't act like you didn't know it was coming. Right.
Listen to instruction.
Yeah. Like
Man,
get out there,
basic.
be prepared. Like,
Right.
just so you know, the vast majority of the kids that I saw that were the high performers that got the offers started in January.
Yes.
The season ended. And here's the thing. The vast majority of them really focused the majority of their time on their body and their skill, right? They competed some 7-on-7, but the vast majority of the kids, and I'll say it, we had a lot of kids that do our program and then our ancillary flag football, and 7v7 programs that go along with it that got higher level offers, right? And you'll see a lot of organizations where it's like, oh, great. And they got this offer and that offer, but they weren't prepared. How are you being prepared? Physically and skill both matter, right? And so if you think just going to compete is going to get you where you want to go compete to your heart's content, right? But if you think that you want to play at the highest level, these guys go back to what I said at the beginning of the show. They are looking for ready-made products. How do you get more ready-made? By training and developing. That is the only way to do it. I know it's not as fun as going out of town, but sticking around and training and developing is the key to getting to that spot where that guy looks at you and goes, damn, that dude can rip the ball.
Right.
That guy can block, right? And I think that's the secret sauce.
Absolutely. Couple for me, Lindenwood camp takeaways. Lee Summit North, DeSmet, and East St. Louis are all going to be really good. They sent almost half their team, right, as far as players and talent showed up. In fact, I think East St. Louis's entire offensive and defensive line showed up, the guys that are going to be starters this year. And guess what? They all walked away with a bunch of offers. Those three schools are going to be really good. Sent a lot of players, got to see a lot of their talent. And also the talent across the state of Missouri, Kansas, Illinois, the entire region is better than it has ever been, right? So that's incentive for you to keep working hard and show up and do what you need to do. Football season has started already. Lindenwood really was the kickoff. You have teams competing in 7-on-7 team right now. They're doing practices. There's going to be all kinds of team camps, scrimmages, stuff happening and coming up. So it's a fun time of year, and we're going to be right here with you through it, all through the season.
Get to more college camps.
In fact, next weekend, if it's not filled up already, the William Jewell Mega Camp. I have guys asking me who didn't show up. Like you said, they had other stuff going on or whatever. Next weekend, Coach Bethany's William Jewell camp is happening over there. It's Coach is his name Amberson?
Yes,
Amberson. His William Jewell Mega Camp is over there. A lot of schools. It's a smaller version, but it's a mega camp as well. Go there, check it out, find it online, find it on social media. Enjoyed ourselves as always. Everybody stay safe. Luckily, we made it. We didn't have to do Lindenwood in the heat that we've experienced the past couple days.
Beautiful weather.
Beautiful. Couldn't have been better weather. Enjoyed ourselves as always. We will see you next week. Everybody stay safe and have a good time. Enjoy your football season that is kicked off. We'll talk to you soon. Football360show.com for all things Football 360 Show. Your socials.
Elite Football on Twitter and Elite Football Academy on the Instagram.
JP Rock MO on Twitter and JP Rock Scout You on Instagram. We'll talk to you soon. See ya.